They always try to correlate everything to the pus and mucus eating human, as if that's the normal, a normal so-called healthy mucus eating human. So we're gonna analyze everybody's blood based on that concept.
It starts to be necessary to find other means of how you interpret data from your reality. Once you clean up your lifestyle enough, sometimes the worldly approach starts to become less and less relevant to you, because all that stuff is all based on, you know how it is.
Yeah, well, they know just enough biology and biochemistry to be incredibly dangerous.
Yeah, I don't want to spend too much time on the studies.
That also brings to mind, there was such a movement against the theory of auto-intoxication that, where that was, Eric sort of he doesn't use that word, but he kind of puts the foundation for that. Then natural hygienists after him came and they made a run with it. It had its day. Then the terminology kind of fell out of fashion, and some of the theories went in strange directions. But just the idea of what happens when the body is overburdened with waste, with toxic waste,
right?
Whether it's uric acid, toxemias, uneliminated matter, slime, we can kind of go through the list of things that we find in the body when you detoxify. Yet this concept of detoxification is in itself controversial, still in these type of circles where they're not even, where it's like, well, because if uric acid is an issue, if these other things are an issue, but then, like you saw, they always like to soften it. They want to make it a little soft, where it's like, so there might be some normal levels, based on whose physiology, right? Because everything they always try to correlate everything to the pus and mucus eating human, as if that's the normal, a normal so-called healthy pus and mucus eating human. So we're gonna analyze everybody's blood based on that concept, as opposed to, I don't see them. They're not taking your blood and like, well, let's create a blood work framework based on Eli, and then everybody has to live up to that. That ain't gonna, that ain't gonna work.
No one's doing these studies. Yeah,
no.
There's so many variables that you have to really consider when you start getting into, this study. There's just, it's hard to pour all of your faith into studies, because there's going to be these little areas that have been overlooked, or like aspects of the studies that have been overlooked. You're never going to have a perfect study, and so it starts to be necessary to find other means of how you interpret data from your reality that are going to be a bit more helpful. For example, the way that you've naturally been designed to interpret data from your environment, given your God-given senses, if you're honest enough to pay attention to them, that can also be very reliable. How do charting and recording how you feel during a fast, as opposed to how you feel 5 months, 6 months down the road doing the same fast after you've eaten a clean, mucus-free life, right? That is real data that you don't need anybody to corroborate that. That is like factual, hard data. And it's, you start to have to rely more and more on that once you clean up your lifestyle enough, such that sometimes the worldly approach, it starts to become less and less relevant to you, because all that stuff is all based on, how it is.
Yeah, well, and I would say it's already irrelevant, but people have been conditioned into that way of thinking, as if you take a portion of the population and you get them into this, I just call it scientism, just because it's another ism. It's just like a religion, and that's why I grabbed one of my favorite books that I always recommend people check out, The Structure of Scientific Revolutions by Mr. Kuhn here, Mr. Thomas Kuhn. But it gets into the paradigms, and really how hard it is to move things within these crusty institutions. And particularly when I look at, recently I've been considering different sciences, and when I look and say, well, not all the sciences are created equal, because if you, depending on how you value, if you look at, okay, well, what has it produced? So we look at physics, and we look at these different areas where it's like, well, yeah, we've produced a lot of things, technological things out here. The weakest of all of these sciences, when people say trust the science, well, I mean, I can trust a little bit of physics because I have there's things all around here that have come out of that, but technologically, but biology, it's like the rung is so low, they're so lost, you know, and because the paradigm hasn't shifted. You've had physics, the paradigm has shifted a few times over the past however many, how many hundreds of years. When it comes to biology or human physiology and that kind of analysis, when you actually start studying it, you'll real quick, you'll see where they say, we don't know. They'll never tell you in the public that. When you actually go and you either look at the studies or the lectures or the textbooks of the stuff that a lot of these folks are getting into in the higher up in school, they're just like, we don't know how it's caused. Start looking up a lot of diseases. Be like, we don't know where. We don't know why. We don't know where it's coming from. So if you're new here, I'm Professor Spira. I practice something called the mucusless diet healing system by Professor Arnold Ehret. I've done so for over 22 years, and I've helped thousands and thousands of other people. Ever had any questions that you wanted to ask me personally? Then I want you to join the Mucus-free Life membership. When you do, you're gonna get direct access to me. I do 2 coaching calls per month. You bring your questions in, and we're gonna go through everything. We have 2 accountability calls per month. We have our own social media platform called Mucus-free Social. You also get access to the menu and recipe library. We also have exclusive training sessions, workshops with me, all kinds of fun stuff planned for the membership. My opinion is reading the book alone is not enough. So many people have read the book, but they didn't have the structure, support, and accountability to keep them on track, to decode certain things that were still confusing. That's what the membership is all about. You're going to have access to a community of people that actually care about your success. There's nothing else out there that's like this, because there's nothing like the mucusless diet healing system. This is one of one. You want to get the benefits out of it, then you're going to want to join the Mucus-free Life membership. Click the link right now. See you in there.
You'll be lost in the land of ideology unknown.
Yeah.
Just endless seas of ideology unknown. It's like, well, how do you have any capacity to help me if you don't know the cause? You can't.
Yeah. It's like they know just enough biology and biochemistry to be incredibly dangerous.
Yeah.
So they know they can give you some synthetic compounds, and you can take them, and they know how it'll alter your consciousness. They can play with your hormones. They can mess around.
Yeah.
But it's very dangerous. It ends up being worse than if they didn't know anything at all.
That's it. Yeah.
If you were just, oh, you're on your own, go figure it out.
Yeah.
Then you would have a lot more, a much better chance on your own than dealing with a lot of their kind of stuff. But again, you get these people that have been conditioned into the, trust the science type of concept. And like what we're showing you is there is no science to trust. You can go read, go study yourself. I've never seen anybody that said that has actually sat down and read a medical journal article themselves. Like they get that, they download that that conditioning from Oprah or something, or some type of television thing or article or something like that. And it really, to me, it's one of the worst banes of our existence in terms of the really maintaining that slave hold that they have on people's minds, because people get so scared. Because then when we start talking about, that we don't agree with protein theories and calorie theories and all this kind of stuff, and then people get so triggered because they've been conditioned to do so. It's like a little fail-safe switch. Like, oh, as soon as you start deviating too far over there, then that's not scientific, and like that's some way to just disregard it.
Right.
And,
right.
So yeah, it's a problematic.
It's the arrogance of thinking that your thinking is superior to the thinking that went into the construction of your mind by nature and your body by nature. That is true and deep knowledge. And we sometimes forget that we have to humble ourselves to that grand architect, that intelligent force that has gone into making up everything, and really give our reverence to that, and realize that our minds are feeble and weak in comparison. And it makes much better sense to align your behaviors in accord to what that intelligence dictates, rather than the conceptions that we can plague ourselves with. And we get into all sorts of trouble when we harbor that arrogance of thinking that our minds are superior to the mind of nature. Right?
Yeah.
Now on those lines, okay, so now I don't know how much time do we have? How much time do we have?
We got as much time as we feel like.
Really?
I don't have, I don't.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm known for being on here. We probably won't go as long as I go sometimes, because we're known for being on here for like 4 hours just rolling.
Gotcha.
So don't even worry about it.
Gotcha. Okay, I definitely don't need that much time, but I just wanted to make sure that I'm not overstepping my welcome here on your platform. Okay, so all right, well let me go through some of this. So we went through a couple of those studies. Now I want to get into just some of what I was suggesting is a good way to think about things, is in terms of natural science, right? How you can start to corroborate things on your own with better understanding. So okay, I'll try to get through this fairly quickly. We are made up of several different bodies. Okay, we're made up of several different bodies. But in terms of what concern us, only 3 of these bodies are worth discussing. So when I say bodies, and I've been through this in many of the videos on my channel, so this might be familiar for people who are already familiar with my channel. But you have a physical body with which you use to interact with the physical world. What people don't realize is you also need subsequent bodies in order to interact with those planes of existence. So if you have emotions at your disposal, which you do, you don't need anyone to corroborate that. You know that you have emotions at your disposal. Emotions are a type of energy. They're a type of, they operate on a particular frequency of emotional material. And in order to interact with the world of emotionality, you actually need an emotional body. It is a finer body made up of elements that you can't see, taste, or touch, but you require that body if you have any hope of interacting with those frequencies. So as you can see on this little depiction on the left here, you have the physical body, and then you have an astral body, all right, a finer body in vibration. Think of like music, right? It's like sound frequencies. Some sound frequencies, the higher the frequency, the less you're able to hear of that sound. It gets finer and more sublimated, okay? And so you have bodies corresponding to you as the human being that transcend all different scales of the electromagnetic spectrum. So you have a physical, an astral, and a mental body. You have the ability to think with your mind. It is this kind of godly type of conception where you create images, create things in your mind, right? That is another level of energy that you're tapping into, and you need a body to be able to interact with that field. So you have a mental body as well. Okay.
Now, in terms of like from a theoretical framework standpoint, so where does this come from? Is there a particular tradition or authors, or is this sort of a conglomeration of various teachings, or something that you the way that you have digested and then interpreted this line of thinking?
Gotcha. Yeah, great question. No, this is definitely not just coming from my theories. You will find corroboration of these aspects of natural esoteric philosophy littered all throughout history, all throughout antiquity. It almost doesn't matter which esoteric tradition you go to, you're going to find that these elements tend to corroborate and see eye to eye. What happened was when we were a bit more, when certain classes of individuals were a bit more connected to their spiritual bodies. I just described bodies. So you can, through development, have a stronger connection to those bodies, and when that happens, you would be able to have access to the information that is accessible with those particular frequencies. And when you make those connections, you are able to glean from reality far more information than is available to you if you are stuck only in the world of effects here on the physical. Okay, so over thousands and thousands of years of trial and error, spiritual investigation, what happened was these principles were learned and codified and preserved in esoteric texts and sacred texts and traditions, and they just passed down over the years and have been added to over time. So yes, there are many sources that you can get this type of information from.
Now, which one would in this triad, the emotional body would be? Would that be related to the mental?
So you could theosophical literature, right? If you use that as a term, you could peruse theosophical literature, and you could find everything you need. Mysticism, right? I'm reluctant to say just general mysticism. You're going to find a whole bunch of BS too.
Oh yeah,
yeah. Then you'll get into the New Age thing, and then New Age kind of distorts information here or there. In terms of authors who've helped preserve this that I've taken influence from, I'm going to introduce you to one in just a second here. C.W. Leadbeater, who you'll see in just a second. Rudolf Steiner, very influential. Both of these individuals were clairvoyant, and they had exactly the ability that I'm telling you about right now, where they had astral vision. And so from at least Rudolf Steiner did, from the earliest of age. And so he was able to glean information with that connection that we only started rediscovering years and years and years after he had passed away. He had physiological understanding that was just light years ahead of everybody in his time. And in terms of how the heart works, how these types of bodies work, how your organs are structured, how your bones are structured, and the connection that they have to planetary bodies, and the informational constructs that are communicating with each other when a body is formed. Like, there's just this incredible body of information.
Right. Because we're talking about systems of thought and ways to understand reality.
Yes.
That are different than the Western,
right.
the Western so-called scientific models.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Now, of course, I don't want to sidetrack the subject that we're actually focusing on today. It's just that I need to go through this just for a second to add the context so that it makes sense where I'm going with this. Okay. So it's just so the audience, I'm not losing the audience. There's a reason why I'm taking a second on this. Okay. So have faith. I'm not just digressing indiscriminately here. Okay. So these bodies that make up the entirety of you as a human being, they're interwoven with each other in an inextricable fashion. They are inextricable from each other. Okay, you can't. The only time that these bodies may sever is when you pass away. Other than that, they're not going anywhere. They all make up you, not just your physical body, not just your brain. Okay, so what that means is, because they're inextricably tied to one another, just by sheer logic alone, any influence that you subject to the mental body or the astral body or the physical body would have to influence the other bodies. So if you make a change on the physical, because it's connected directly, every fabric is directly connected to the astral body, it means that astral body has to take effect, which also subsequently means your mental body would also have to take effect. So when you're eating in such a way that your physical body changes, those changes ripple to your other bodies and will affect your behavior and your thinking and your emotionality. Have to. All right. So that's one way you can think about this if you ever want to go down that rabbit hole on how food affects your behavior, or if it does. If you're not sure if it does, it has to. And sorry, did you have something that you wanted to add quickly?
Well, I'll add. So this is the rational fasting for physical, mental, and spiritual rejuvenation.
Yes.
That's the triad.
That's it. That's the triad. Yes, exactly. Lots of relationships in nature seem to have a triune. Seem to use that triune relationship, that threefold element, where the three combine into the one and then make something marvelous.
Yeah.
Now, okay, so we just talked about how that they have to influence each other. Oh, and vice versa. So if you make a change in the mental body and your mental thinking, those changes will ripple down and affect your physical body just the same, vice versa.
I want you to look right here. Here's another great video specifically for you. So click right here, and I will see you over there. Peace, love, and breath.